Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to another Ilmfeed podcast with your host Shabir Hassan. And today we have a very, very special guest all the way from Canada. He's a poet, he's an actor, he's a filmmaker, he's a creative. It's the legend himself, Boonaa Mohammed, in the building. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, how are you?
Alhamdulillah, good.
Had a few busy days, I can see, in the UK, and you got caught in a storm as well, mashallah.
Was that what you call a storm?
That's what we call a storm.
Oh, okay. I thought that was just a regular day out here. Yeah.
no, that is a storm for us.
Okay. No, it wasn't that bad.
Alhamdulillah.
I left a real snowstorm, by the way, in Canada.
Oh, in Canada, yeah?
Yeah, like snow up to your knees.
Wow, okay.
So this was,
the UK is not ready for that type of weather, ever.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for joining us on the
problem,
podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on, and obviously I've been following your work for many, many years now.
Oh, it's
I think for a good part of 10 years, I would say.
That makes me really old, huh?
Yeah. Let me start with a funny story, right? And then we'll carry on. So I think about 7-8 years ago, you were at an event known as a Global Peace and Unity event, GPU, run by
GPU.
Islam Channel.
And that was big. They used to do
that was
big
big,
ones.
that was big. I think it was like some of the biggest events that we've had here in London. So there was this poetry competition, and there was a few people that I don't know if you remember, like you were one of the judges for this poetry competition. It was like a side thing.
Rehan is the guy who's in this. You can't see him, but he's gonna laugh because he tells me a bunch of stories and I have no idea. I don't remember any of them.
Happened. Yeah. So anyway, I'll tell you. And so you were there. You were the judge. I think Brother Yahya Hawa maybe was like another judge. I can't remember exactly.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And so you two were sitting there, and then there was a bunch of guys that came and they did their poetry, some spoken word, and then one of my friends, he was there. He entered, and you made him the winner of the competition.
How much did he pay me?
I don't know how much he paid you in the end. So
I genuinely
gave him, the friend was me, by the way.
Oh,
yeah. I'm just trying to be like vague about it.
Oh, I really like multiple personality disorder.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So it was actually me. So I entered the competition, and then like I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, Boonaa Mohammed chose me as a winner of a poetry. Like I literally flooded that on social media. I was like, Boonaa Mohammed chose me.
You're welcome.
Hilarious.
And I've basically given you your career then.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, that's it. Feed is because of Boonaa Mohammed.
Because of me. See that? People don't thank me enough. SubhanAllah. It's funny. Like honestly, I've always had this initiative in my mind of trying to help other artists. And I think it comes out of the frustration I've found of not having enough Muslim artists. Yeah. So I've always, opportunities like that. I literally just did a poetry tour that was a competition last week. I was in the U.S. I was touring the west coast of the U.S. and we did something similar where we, would host this platform and people compete. And it's one of the guys who I brought on tour with me was one of those guys who many years ago I discovered him at his university as well.
Nice.
So it's just something that it's been a constant trend of mine where someone like yourself will say, oh yeah, 10 years ago I did this thing and you were there. And I was like, yep, that's just because I've been around for so long. It's become
exactly.
like furniture. They just stick you in any event they can. But it's always a blessing, alhamdulillah, that you actually are able to provide young Muslim artists with that platform and that ability to share their work, because otherwise if we don't do it, who will?
No, I think it's really important because like going back, like I said, 10 years, I think there's artists like yourself and Muslim Bilal, that young people growing up like me, we didn't have, like alhamdulillah today I think there's a lot more artists, poets, spoken word, in terms of the Muslim scene. But I think growing up 10 years ago, there wasn't that many. So it would be people like yourself that we'd look up to and be like, wow, okay, these people are sharing their art with the world, with an Islamic message, with a positive message behind it. And it gave that confidence. Alhamdulillah, even like you guys gave me confidence for my own poetry and spoken word, and alhamdulillah. So yeah, I think it's important. I think it's important what you mentioned about supporting other artists as well, because I think there are. What do you think? Do you think there's too many now, or do you think we still need more? What do you think?
I mean, I don't think it's really a matter of too many. I think there's not enough good talent.
Right.
And I think that's partly due to the fact that there aren't enough platforms for people to get better. Right. So I have an advantage over most people because before I was introduced to the Muslim audience, I had already done my 10,000 hours. They say that in order for you to perfect a craft, you need to do 10,000 hours of it. I was already an accomplished poet. I was already an accomplished writer. I had already toured. I had already done so much with my craft, although it wasn't necessarily with an Islamic message. So a lot of Muslims didn't know of me. But when I started tweaking my, it was a more personal development and growth when I started becoming more religious. Obviously, my work took that same tone. But the actual skill itself, I already had kind of locked down. Like I already knew, I was confident. I had done well. I had shows where I didn't do well. I had gone through that cycle. And I feel like with Muslim artists, those platforms don't exist. Where can you perform and do badly? You know? Like if you're going to be on a flyer as a young Muslim artist, someone's going to put you on in an event. The expectation is, no, he's going to be amazing. People are going to come. They're going to pay money. But really, I always find it more interesting. What avenues do we have for people to practice their craft and actually bomb, do bad in the beginning? Because that's really the only way you get better.
Yeah,
it's like any craft. You need to actually do it a few times. So I've done many shows, in my life where I didn't do as well as I wanted to do. I've done hostile environments. I've performed like like high school students that didn't want to be there, and they're just looking for an excuse to throw things at you or boo you or whatever. And those experiences really shape you, and they make you a stronger, more confident person on stage. So I've had that experience. And I realized that a lot of Muslim artists don't have that experience. And it's important because in order to cultivate that talent, you need to invest. And unless we as a community invest in people's opportunities to get better, just like, as an imam or a khatib, your first khutbah is not going to be the best one you ever give. But you have to give a first khutbah in order for it to get better. Where are those platforms and avenues for you to kind of experiment along the way?
Yeah, sure. Just on that note, by the way, what has been your most memorable event over the last 10, 15 years where even like a funny moment, like whilst you're performing or something,
Yeah, I'd love to say it's the one that you were at, the one that I clearly didn't remember, but that's out of the question. I mean, I've done a lot. Like, I've done stuff that, like, most Muslims wouldn't imagine,
Right.
I've performed at, like, major conferences. I've performed at, I've done weddings. I've done, only thing I haven't done is, like, a divorce ceremony or, like, a janazah. I haven't done that. But I've done, I think, I did one event that actually did stick out of my mind. I performed at Imam Siraj Wahaj. I'm sure you probably know of him.
Yeah, of course.
I performed at Imam Siraj Wahaj's 30-year anniversary of his masjid. His masjid in Brooklyn is called Masjid al-Taqwa. They had a 30-year anniversary event. And this was, mind you, 10 years ago. This is more than 10 years ago, okay? And I performed at that event. And you had Mos Def, who was there.
Yeah.
You had, any big name in, like, American Dawah or whatever. They were all there. And a lot of people there didn't know who I was. Social media wasn't as big. YouTube, it was a lot of big older people as well. And this is not to brag, but I did so well. Okay, I went up and I just smashed it.
Yeah.
That, like, Imam Siraj, to this day, anytime I see him, he talks about that.
Really?
And it was actually one of those experiences where I was like, I did such a good job that everyone afterwards came up and talked to me and spoke to me about it because it was fresh. Like, they hadn't heard something like that before. And that was really memorable. My wife was with me, actually. We were in New York. Funny enough, when I went back home, my house had been robbed. So, nice twist of the story, yeah.
Major twist, plot twist.
Plot twist, yeah. And then there was another performance as well. There was Imam Siraj's performance. GPU was really big as well back in the day. GPU, I don't know how many, there was like 30,000 people there or something like that.
At least, yeah.
When you get to really big venues like that, actually it's not as nerve-wracking. People think it'd be more nervous, but
that's interesting you say that. I find it exactly the same. I hate performing in a small room with like 100 people.
Yeah, that's more nerve-wracking.
To like 10,000 people.
Yeah, because once you reach a certain threshold of people, you can't see anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
So it becomes then actually it like starts reversing in number.
Yeah.
Once you reach like 2,000, 3,000 people, it becomes less because you can't see anyone. Nobody can see, or people can see you, but you can't really see them. There was one other event I was going to say. I forgot. I'll come to it back. I'll come back to it.
But I mean, you would have traveled a lot now, right?
Yeah.
In the last let's say decade. Again, what would be one of your like standout places that you've been to? Clearly not the UK.
Yeah, no, UK. I mean, UK is like I've been here so many times.
Yeah,
I've done big events, small events. I think for me, I always find it exciting going to like exotic places or places that are not on my roadmap. Like I've done a few events in Nigeria. I've done a few events in Malaysia is always fun. Like I've done Malaysia, Singapore.
Yeah.
I've performed in the Philippines.
Wow.
So places that half the time I'm not even sure if they understand me. I'm like, am I speaking too fast? South Africa's been fun. Africa's fun. Like I like going to Africa and performing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for me, once you start getting into the performance side of things, and I'm confident in what it is I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And a lot of people sometimes have heard the poems before. So you see sometimes you'll perform and people are miming the words along with you. One time I performed in Sudan, subhanAllah.
Wow, okay.
I performed in Sudan, and it was actually a very, very big event. And it was like the Medical Students Association and this university in Sudan and Khartoum had come together and brought all these people in. And I remember performing, and I was so jet lagged. I mean, I had arrived, and time zone, everything was so skewed. And I was performing one of my pieces, and I actually messed up in the middle. And which doesn't happen often. I don't normally forget lines. But someone in the audience jumped in and actually helped me out. Yeah, they're like, oh, no, the next line is this. And I was like, oh, okay. Thank you. And I just kept it moving. That's been fun. Yeah, alhamdulillah.
You know, because you've been doing it for a while now, what do you consider yourself, not in an arrogant way, but do you consider yourself like the pioneer when it comes to the spoken word scene in the Muslim
I mean, yes and no. I think for me, like I have always known. I mean, for me, spoken word as a genre, there's people that obviously have come before me that I had benefited from. A lot of non-Muslims, for example, but just stylistically, for example.
Yeah, sure.
I think what was unique when I started was that social media was just kind of kicking off.
Yeah.
So, like for example, YouTube was a big phenomenon that really helped propel me.
Yeah.
Although I had been performing for a very long time. In the traditional spoken word community, it was a taboo to put your work online.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in the slam poetry scene, it was a bit of a taboo, partly because the live experience couldn't really be replicated through a video, right? So you would see a video, and it's like, okay, the video is cool, but when you were in that room, the energy, doesn't translate. You don't really get it. So a lot of artists felt like a video wouldn't do their work justice, so they didn't put their work online. So there's a lot of years where I just didn't want to put it online because that was a taboo that existed. But eventually, I was like, you know what? I don't really care. It's fine. So then I remember actually being a part of it's a long story. I used to be part of an actual like hip hop group.
Okay.
It was like an Afrobeat hip hop funk kind of thing, and we had this lead. I was the lead singer of it, lead rapper singer, and I kind of felt really guilty about it. I didn't really like what we were going down a pretty mainstream route, and we had a lot of people behind us that were supporting us, some really big artists, and I pulled away from it, and I just was like, you know what? I don't want to be in clubs. I don't want to be doing this type of thing. So I kind of walked away from the group, and I went and I studied in Egypt for a few months.
Okay.
And during that time, I had more of an Islamic awakening, and I felt, like I had a clearer idea of what it is I wanted to do. And then when I came back, I released a poem online called For the Love. Right? And that poem to me, in essence, was what I was experiencing. It was the fact that I loved this thing, Islam, and the people around me didn't really get it because in that mainstream world, they were like, why do you want to talk about this stuff, And it was just genuine. I felt like that was a time when I was very sincere. Yeah. Not to say I'm not sincere now. I hope, Allah protect us. But at that time, it just was something that there was no audience. There wasn't like a group of people that I was targeting. There was nothing. I just put it online and just to see what would happen. And, from that video, subhanAllah, when you leave something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah Azza wa Jal replaces it. I, at that time, was touring kind of Canada alone. After I put out this For the Love video, it went viral. Yeah. And at that time, Muslim viral was like, you get 30,000 hits or 40,000 views. Like, that was a big deal, because there wasn't a lot of Islamic content. And because of that, I remember I got an invite to an MSA or an ISOC for you guys. I'll translate it because I know Brits don't really speak English. They invited me to a conference in St. Louis, which was my first time performing outside the country. And then from there, literally, it just skyrocketed. Like, people would invite me here and they invite me there. And that video For the Love really kind of propelled my online persona. Because again, I had a lot of material before that. But I had taken some stuff down. I had, put some different stuff up. But that was one of the first pieces that I think the Muslim community really digested. I remember the reaction to it was just funny because people were like, "What? Like, is this okay?" People to this day, they sometimes don't even know what the poem is about.
They talk about some like.
They think that for those of you who haven't seen it, it's a poem where I'm personifying this woman. And I'm talking about Islam, but I'm describing it in this kind of romantic kind of notion. And I remember Muslims would be like, "This is haram. You can't talk about Islam like Islam should be a man, not a woman." This is like weird fiqh stuff that I'm like, what are you even talking about?
That's funny.
But that like just commotion that emerged from it, I think it really opened a lot of people's eyes. And I remember there was a big blog at the time. If you ask me what the name is, I can't even tell you. But it was like a pioneering Muslim platform. and they posted the video, and I remember just seeing like hundreds and hundreds of comments.
Wasn't Ilm Feed, was it? No, we weren't around then.
No, no. You guys are probably like 4 years old at that time. I mean, you're a young guy.
I don't think we were even around.
Yeah, no. So it was just, I remember just seeing the comments and people's confusion, but excitement, but understanding, and it was like just a range of mixed emotions.
Sure,
now, like for a Muslim poet to put up a video, you have something to compare it to. You can be like, all right, this is good as or not as good as this.
Yeah.
But at that time, there was really nothing. So that was for me a fun experience to see people digest art and how they understood art, and it's kind of similar to what I'm doing right now with my filmmaking, in the sense that it's introducing or reintroducing something which is in our culture, right? Like storytelling is embedded within Islamic culture. It's embedded within the Quran. It's embedded within many of the narratives we understand. Hadith. This is how the Prophet ﷺ, this is how Allah Azza wa Jal relays stories to us.
Yeah.
So for me, I was kind of like, like poetry existed in Islam, right? I'm not making this up for the first time. But it was just, again, reintroducing that to them and to see the reaction and what it led to. Alhamdulillah, I think everything happens for a reason, so I'm happy with it.
Alhamdulillah. It's funny because I think that was probably the first piece that I heard from you, which was For the Love. And then seeing that reaction, and then obviously seeing more and more that came after that. It's crazy how I think, like, back then it was more just about putting something good out, and then it could spread. And nowadays you have to make sure that the visuals are on point, the sound, because if you don't put that out, you've pretty much lost most of the audience. What changes have you seen over the last 10 years?
So that video was actually a live performance.
Yeah,
right?
It was. Yeah,
and so that's something that has definitely changed, because I could just get away with that back in the day.
Yeah.
And I think one advantage that I have, again, over a lot of artists is because I have a lot more experience on stage. So in terms of performing, there's two aspects. There's the writing component, and then there's the performance poet, the performance aspect. So what we do is spoken word or performance poetry. There's a lot of poets who their work looks better on paper, right? Then there's artists like myself who my work on paper may not be that impressive, but it's really the delivery. It's how I present it that makes it good. And I think that nowadays you'll find there are visuals and the whole kind of music video side of things that's taken off. So now it doesn't really matter how good your actual art is, it's more of how good the visuals are.
Right.
But then when these artists are brought in for a live scenario, when someone says, okay, you did that really good online, let's see you replicate that in real life at an event or whatever, then they're kind of like, oh, it's not as easy to do. So I think that's the big shift that I've seen happen. The visuals have taken over, and the live performing craft part of it isn't necessarily as relevant.
Do you think it's important to have that balance though? Like, obviously your art has to be good, but I think nowadays you have to also have that visual side to it, because like I said, yes, a lot of people don't focus on the art as much. I think that as well. The generation that we have now, they're more interested in. You can't even put a 5-minute video out now.
Yeah.
If you put a 5-minute video out, most people won't even click on it. I don't even know this podcast is an hour long. Unless you're interested in the actual episode or the topic or the guest that we have, most people don't click on these types of. They want to see 1.5 minute, 2-minute videos. Instagram.
The attention span definitely has gone down.
It's gone down.
Yeah.
So as an artist, has that been quite challenging for you, whether it's in the poetry side or the filmmaking side? What challenges have you faced now over the last few years, and have you had to adjust to that?
I think I've tried to remain kind of sincere and pure to my initial intentions and goals, and I think that's done me well. I think that there's always a place for classics, there's always a place for a niche. I can still perform For the Love today, by the way. That's one of those pieces that I will go to an event and I'll just throw it out there, and a lot of people have heard of it, some people haven't heard of it. There's always a new audience as well, right, coming in. So for me, I feel like it's more important to stick to my guns, stick to my instincts, which sometimes is, okay, this piece could be a little bit longer. I could do this piece as an animation with a lot of visuals, or I can just do it as a performance piece, just a live performance gig. I think as an artist, you have to kind of trust your instincts. Doesn't always mean I'm right, but at the end of the day, I feel happy with what I've done.
Sure.
There's never really been an instance where I've delegated my creative side or my artistic side to someone else and I had to watch them work their magic and then been afterwards, oh, I didn't really like how that turned out. It's always been, I'm in control of what I'm doing. And that's empowering at the same time, because in many ways you feel like your success and your failure is up to you.
Yeah.
Whereas nowadays, I was speaking with my friend here, Rehan, we were talking today about the role of how industry is sort of crept into the artistic sphere,
Yeah.
where now you have people like that have managers, and they have, this whole social media world they're trying to craft, and it's about getting the perfect image and the perfect picture, and it's about getting, the right people involved in social media. And for me, I'm just like, look, I'm pure. I mean, this is what I do, this is what I love, and I'm gonna do it the way I like it. I'm not begging for anyone to be my fan. I'm not begging for you to be my friend. If you want to enjoy it, that's great. If you don't, bismillah, you're welcome to move on. And I think that kind of I don't know if it's so much sincerity, it's more integrity, just to have artistic integrity. I don't take what I do as a joke, I really do believe in it, and I try and invest my time and effort to it. And when I go out and I perform, I put everything into it. And I think that resonates with people, and that's, I think, why I've had longevity at a time when a lot of people, I've seen many one-hit wonders, for lack of a better term. I've seen many people who have started off or have tried to enter this world, and it just didn't last. And I think it's partly due to the fact that there's so much influence and people pulling you this way, and social media and sisters and brothers, and their intentions start getting really funky. But alhamdulillah, early on I was able to establish myself with people that I trust, scholars and ulama, and people that are around me that I would turn to for advice, and I think that part's kind of kept me a bit grounded. And so I'm not as easily swayed by the trends, because trends come and go. I've seen things happen and things leave. But again, when you are sincere to what it is you're doing, I think the rest of it becomes quite easy.
I want to talk about something that I don't think we've really spoken about. We've had quite a few creators on. We've had Ilyas Mao on. We've had Isam. We've had quite a few different. I don't think we've spoken about this aspect. So I think it would be good to speak about it with yourself, with the experience that you have and the shift that you've seen, which is about creatives. So whether you're a poet or a nasheed artist or a filmmaker or whatever it might be. Not getting, you kind of alluded to it at the beginning about not getting the platform and us not kind of reaching out and supporting them. Like, I've seen it myself here in the UK. You've seen it around the world, where a lot of artists or creatives, they're not appreciated. They're not given a platform, as opposed to, like the generations that are past. They kind of more supported things that are like, okay, if there's a career in it, if there's studies involved, if there's a degree involved, then I'll support you.
Sure.
But if it's something like poetry, like, where on earth is that going to get you?
It's not real.
Like, exactly. It's not real. If you want to become a filmmaker, come on, man. You're not Steven Spielberg. Like, this stuff, you're not Hollywood. This is not Hollywood, right? So I'm sure you've got a lot of thoughts on stuff like this. Like, what have you seen, and what are your thoughts on this? Because obviously, like, as an artist myself, I've seen it. Like, it's very difficult, and then you put a lot of time and effort and everything that you have into it, and then there's nothing at the end. There's no platform, or you're just underappreciated. And sometimes you start thinking to yourself, is it even worth, like, me doing all of this?
Sure.
So what are your thoughts on this?
I think it comes down mainly to how we define success. What is success? Is success views? Is success the amount of people who memorize your lyrics? Is success touring? Is success money? Or ultimately, is success in creating a legacy, a lasting impact in the lives of others, which you will benefit from on the day of judgment, right? One thing I can say I'm proud of is the fact that my work, I feel, is a sadaqah jariyah. I was never into the habit of, like, I never even used to monetize my videos. I never really cared. I'm like, it's in the universe. People will watch it after I'm gone. This is what I'm leaving behind. Someone will watch this 10 years from now and they'll say, subhanAllah, that helped me during a rough time. It brought me closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what I'm banking on, And I think that's the importance of ikhlas and sincerity. A lot of people now with the whole nasheed world, and it's become more of an industry. I know people who I look at them and I don't even think you're religious. You're a Muslim. Yes, I'm not going to take that away from you. But I don't even think you care about Islam. I see them banking on the fact that, hey, if I say these few words in this melody, I'm sure this charity will be gullible enough to bring me on board for a tour. And that to me is problematic. And ultimately, you get what you ask for. From the hadith of Prophet ﷺ, he taught us that, about sincerities. If your intention is to have the fame, if your intention is to have the money, you will get that, right? You will achieve that in this life. But if your intention is something greater than that, even if not everybody even if you don't get 1 million views, even if you share your work at a little conference and the only person inspired there is your grandmother, alhamdulillah, if that's what you're in it for, I think that component of it is often not discussed because it's become a career now. Which rightly so. It should be respected in that sense. Just the same way I feel like imams should be respected. Imams should be paid accordingly. It doesn't mean we remove the sincerity aspect of it. There's your haqq too. What are you owed? But I think that for artists, it's sometimes not as clear. It's very
Yeah, yeah.
blurry, a very gray area. What am I doing this for? What ultimately defines my success? And that's why I think a lot of people have come and gone, because when they didn't achieve that success that they were expecting, they felt like, well, what's the point? You know, they get burnt out very easily. I've put up videos that didn't do well. I've, you know, done stuff that, according to those measurements, right, that didn't necessarily reach that type of success.
Yeah.
But like, I'm happy, you know, like it's so weird to say, I feel so rich. When I go home, I have a home, first of all, right? Which a lot of people don't have. I have children that I love, and I'm able to spend time with them and raise them. I have a wife. I'm wearing clothes. I have a cell phone. I have food. This to me.
What's a cell phone? Sorry.
A cell phone, yeah, I know. In the UK, you guys still using pagers, right? I don't know what's popular here. But, you know, this to me is like, well, what else do I want? What else, you know, what else is more than that? People say, oh, I want to go mainstream. I want to get big. How many houses can you live in at once? How many cars can you drive at once? You know, how many phones can you talk at once? Some people can do more than one. I don't know how, right? But I think how you define success is also very skewed by now, for example, things like Instagram and the world we see around us. Like, if you're living like day to day, paycheck to paycheck, definitely there's a jump, right? And this is what sociologists teach us, that going from poor or poverty, lower income, to middle class, there's a huge jump in comfortability of life. But once you're at middle class and you're doing okay and you're taking care of yourself, jumping from middle class to upper class or to become very wealthy, there's not a huge jump in terms of happiness. Because what do you define? Like, if it's a matter of food, I eat food every day. You know, I'm not forced to fast like many people around the world are, right? I'm able to afford, you know, certain luxuries in life. I can go out to dinner with my family. I can buy clothes if I want, you know. So if you're content with living a lifestyle which is suitable to, you know, any normal person, I think that there is a definite chance for you in the field of arts, in terms of creative Islamic arts. But if you are having ambitions that go beyond that, like you want to become, you know, you keep comparing yourself to these big mainstream acts and those people that, you know, when it comes to morals and stuff like that, obviously we don't share that with them. So if we don't share the same morals and values, how can you share the same paycheck at the end? I could easily sell my soul tomorrow and become, you know, a world-selling touring artist. That's not even a question. And that's what I was lined up for before I really joined into this world. I was on that same, I had that same trajectory to become, like, you know, a major hip-hop rap artist. But again, I didn't see that as success. That wasn't defined to me as the ultimate goal. I think when you're able to recalibrate and understand what does success mean to you, you're able to think more about how do I plan on achieving it.
I think that's some very sound and powerful advice, to be honest with you. Just in the day and age that we're living in, it's so relevant, because, like you said, the Instagram lifestyle, everyone wants to make that viral video, but really, like you said, most of the time when you get that viral hit, or like nowadays you've got TikTok, right? So like people are making all sorts of videos.
So I know I'm old. I don't even know what TikTok
stuff,
is.
right?
I know what TikTok is, but I don't want anything to do with it. I've reached my social media threshold. You know?
That's it, right?
It's just me, and I'm still on MySpace. I'm still on, you know, Black Planet. You guys know Black Planet out here?
Bebo.
No, you don't have that. What is it?
Bebo?
No, I don't know.
High Five?
I know High Five.
Yeah.
There's a few out there, but
There's
definitely
a few, right?
Different world, yeah.
So just living in this day and age, like the millennial generation want to make those hits, but it doesn't last at all, like you said.
No.
Like, it's not a legacy. You might have your 5 minutes of fame, and then after that it dies out, and you never really got much out of it. So I think it's really important points you made there. I want to talk about, just moving away from the poetry side of things, you've already mentioned the filmmaking, which is quite interesting, because Boonaa Mohammed, maybe 5-6 years ago, people would always say as a spoken word artist, as a rapper, in that type of... But now we're seeing you kind of move towards filmmaking. You've already had a few films and productions that have been out in the past. Now you've got Righteous Sinner. Before you had Tug of War as well. That's interesting. Like, what was that transition all about? I know you're still making poetry and you're still writing, but tell us about that transition. Yeah,
so I think, again, according to kind of the Muslim vernacular, we're very confident and comfortable putting people into boxes, right? Like, you are a poet, you are an imam, you are this is who you are, your identity. But people are very complex. I started acting before I even started writing poetry.
Oh, wow.
So I have a very actually long history in theater.
Nice.
I did stage theater from when I was very young. And actually, I always loved the stage in general. And that's what obviously transferred over into my performing.
Yeah.
But I think that being a person who loved theater I loved television, loved movies. I loved media in general. I always just saw myself as a storyteller. I didn't really see a big difference. Like I don't see a difference between rap and poetry. I don't really see a difference between theater and film. You know, these things are one and the same to me. So being able to express myself in a different branch of storytelling is still right up my alley, right? If I start a clothing line tomorrow, you could be like, oh, that's out of the ballpark. Yeah. But to me, this is still very relevant. So I started off, first of all, in school. I went to Ryerson University, which is in Toronto, and I studied radio and television arts, which is a very elite media program.
Right.
And so my background has always been in media, and I run a media production company on the side. So I do like trailers, I do documentaries, short films for different companies and stuff. That's like my day 9 to 5 kind of thing. Yeah. But I always wished, and I had this idea of doing film, especially Islamic films. Yeah. Always noticing that there was this huge gap and a huge vacancy in this world, and we always love to complain about how the media misrepresents us, about how nobody gives us a fair shot, but why don't we create our own platform? Why aren't we the ones telling our own stories? As the famous saying goes, if you're not at the table, then you are on the menu, right? If you're not at the table, then you are on the menu. Many people will have Muslim characters. They'll have Muslim-based stories and worlds that their movies or films revolve around. But how rare is it that we are actually the ones shaping and creating those worlds? For me, it was important to tell stories that I thought were authentic to the Western Muslim experience. Yeah. And by the way, they're not always good stories. There's not always a happy ending, right? My first film, Tug of War, dealt with 2 young Muslims who became radicalized. And that was a very uncomfortable conversation to have. Yeah. But that's the point of art, right? Especially the art that I envision and the art that I preach is critical thinking art. Art that is meant to actually affect change in the world. So being able to have a film that examines these 2 characters, see the different things that they go through, and then afterwards dissecting it and having an audience there that it can ask questions and we can come up with resolutions. No, what should they have done, right? That to me is very important. So similarly, in this same vein, this film Righteous Sinner is based off the story of Barsisa the monk. And this is a classic Islamic tale. It's not a hadith. It's one of the Israeliyat stories. So it's a story of the people who came in the past. We don't say it's not authentic. We don't say it is authentic, but we take the benefit from it. It's based on the story of a monk during the time of Bani Israel, who is this righteous person, abstains from sin, major sin, all that kind of good stuff. And he's asked by his neighbors to look after their sister. I'm just explaining the story for people who haven't heard it before. He's asked by his neighbors to look after their sister. The monk initially resists. He says, no, I don't want to. It's too much fitna. I don't want to, it's not up my alley. They beg him until he finally says, okay, fine, I'll do it. So now Shaitan comes to this man, the monk, and tells him, you should make food for her. She's probably struggling to take care of herself. I'm just paraphrasing the story. But so Shaitan convinces him to then take that first initial step. So he eventually goes off and he'll, leave food by her door. Then Shaitan will come to him and say, well, why don't you sit and eat with her in the house? She's probably very lonely. She has no one to speak with. So then the next step, he'll do that. Until eventually he goes down these steps until he and this woman finally make zina. And after making zina, she becomes pregnant. And so now he's in this huge catastrophe. He doesn't know what to do, right? Like, oh my God, what should I do? So he thinks to himself, well, the best way to get rid of this whole situation is just to kill her. So the monk ends up killing her. After she's dead, he goes and he buries her. The brothers return home. And the brothers, hey, say, what's going on? Where's our sister? And he tells the brothers, well, she died. At that time, people just die for no reason. They just cough and they die, right? So they say, the monk tells the brothers, we buried, she died, natural causes. I buried her here. I'm sorry for your loss. And they're like, okay, no harm done. Shaitan comes to the brother, one of the brothers, and tells him, actually, Barsisa made zina. She became pregnant. And she's buried here, and if you go and bury her and unbury her, you'll find that she was actually pregnant the entire time. So the brother goes and they take her out of the ground. They find that she was pregnant. Then they want revenge, so they go and trying to harm Barsisa. So Shaitan comes to Barsisa now and tells him, well, I have a way out. I can get you out of this mess. If you submit yourself to me, you make sajda to me, I will get you out of this. So imagine this man started off as this righteous man. He didn't even want to, spend this time taking care of this woman, whatever. To the point where now Shaitan is coming to him and saying, make sajda. He ends up doing it, and then he's killed or he kills himself. I can't remember how the story goes, but he ends up dying in a state of kufr, right? And so the scholars, when they analyze the story, they talk about the tricks of shaitan, how shaitan works on people, how he kind of builds people up and then tears them down. So when I heard this story when I was younger, I thought, I was like, first of all, this story's crazy.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
this is nuts. Like, this is some crazy thriller that's happening right now. And I thought, what would it be like if this actually took place in modern day times? How would we translate that story into 2020 in the world we live in?
Yeah.
So the story is based, the film that I made is an adaptation of this story of Barsisa. I play this, not a monk, but an imam, a junior imam. So I've studied a little bit overseas, but I'm called back to my community because my father, who was the imam of the masjid, he's passed away suddenly. And so now I've been tasked with kind of looking after the community, but I'm not fully like equipped to do so.
Yeah.
And similarly, my neighbors in my building, they are going away on an emergency trip. They asked me to kind of look after their sister, be an emergency contact, and we begin to have an illicit relationship. At the same time, I'm also dealing with a severe mental health issue. In the film, basically, my character has become addicted to sleeping pills. He's suffering from insomnia. He's in a very deep state of depression. I mean, he's just lost his father. His mother died when he was young. And a lot of things are going on in his life. And I wanted to tie in those different themes of mental health, of depression, of premarital relationships, the tricks of shaitan. And so these themes kind of swirl around in this film, and they cultivate in this film, Righteous Sinner. But I used that framework of the story of Barsisa to tell this story in a modern day time, but definitely has these many twists that I mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, that story, growing up hearing it, it was like, wow. Like,
yeah, it's mental. Like, I hear
it's
it.
Scary, right?
Yeah, it's very scary.
So scary, that
I remember
story.
hearing that like in a khutbah and just being like, what?
Yeah, I know, right?
He did what?
Yeah, exactly. And then, like, especially the ending, like how he went from what he was to what he became. So it's crazy, and I'm so glad that you've actually gone out of your way to make. So obviously, alhamdulillah, I've had the privilege of watching most of it. I haven't finished it yet. My initial thoughts. Without any, there can't really be any spoilers, can there? Like, because...
Well, no, actually, it's different than the story of Barsisa.
Slight, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So, without giving much away, but my initial thoughts, I guess, from watching it is, number one is, thank God it's not, like, cheesy. Like, like, typical Islamic productions that we've seen is, like, reusing the same like humming and stuff like that.
Yeah,
you've actually gone out of your way to create original.
Which actually Ilyas Mao.
Ilyas, right? He did it. Yeah.
And that, by the way, that's funny enough. That's how I found Ilyas.
Really?
Ilyas scored my first film, Tug of War. So he actually did the soundtrack for that, and I needed a nasheed artist to do it. Ilyas was, I don't know how much of his story he's told you, but he was like some jahil singer, like he had some crazy, and I was like, look, akhi, why are you doing this nonsense? You could do, and I saw he had a talent. And I was like, we could do something really amazing with your talent. So he helped me score the film. He laid all the vocals for it and stuff. And then that's when we built our relationship. That's when I helped him and started writing for him and stuff.
Nice.
But yeah, so Ilyas composed all the music for this as well. So that's why it is very, in using non-instrumental music in a film is extremely difficult.
It's difficult. That's what I was going to say.
Because you want music in many ways. If you may not realize it, but if you watch a TV show or whatever on mute and you don't hear the music, you don't hear how it builds the suspense, it's very, very difficult to enjoy.
Yeah.
So having that component of, without using instrument-based music, showing women only in hijab, that is, first of all, it's a jump already for a lot of Muslims. For whatever reason, they feel like we shouldn't have women in film. We shouldn't have women on screen. The reality is that women need to be represented.
Yeah.
We live in a real world where Muslim women exist.
Yeah.
And if there are no positive representations of them, we have no one to blame but ourselves. So obviously having women that are dressed accordingly, and this is partly due to the having those scholars in the background, like people like Sheikh Navid Aziz, who's been my advisor on this film, helping me kind of craft, what are the boundaries, because there's really no fiqh around this. It's a very gray space.
Sure.
But having those people around that can help kind of navigate those gray areas has been really helpful.
No, that's so important. The fact that with something, a big project like this, the fact that you've got scholars on board and that they've been advising you, I think that's a huge lesson for a lot of us to take, that always make sure you're consulting, because you just don't know. Like, you can just even you just say one thing, when you're scripting it, I'm sure it was difficult, like to make sure you weren't doing the scene might go this way or something might pop into it. So I think it's really important that you're consulting. So yeah, as I was saying, I think that was really good. I was so happy to not hear the same humming YouTube background. So that's one thing. Even the performance, the acting, I was pleasantly surprised, if I'm honest with you. Like, I've seen short dramas before, and okay, you know, but you can just tell like some of it was forced. But alhamdulillah, I felt like this one was the acting, the performance was great.
We got real actors.
Yeah, like proper, you could tell like these guys aren't just like guys you found in the masjid. Hey, do you want to jump in there?
And the majority of them, majority of them, oddly enough, are non-Muslim. So even the girl who plays the lead character, the lead female role of Maryam, she's not Muslim.
Oh wow, okay, interesting.
I mean, I don't know any female Muslim actresses. I'd love to have female Muslims in the, but it's one of those things where we don't produce them. You know, like we don't cultivate that, and it's back to what I was saying earlier. We don't give opportunities or spaces like that for people to flourish, anyways. So where would a Muslim female even get her first start? Where would she even get her first gig? You know, it's not like we are running around scripting short dramas for them to do bad in so that they can get better. It's just, you know, for whatever reason, it doesn't exist. But yeah, so I had to get a non-Muslim female, but she did a great job as well. And you know, it's funny. Like she was so cool with it. You know, a lot of times these actresses are brought onto sets and they're like, okay, we want you to take off these clothes. We want you to, you know, have this make out scene or whatever. And I'm like, no, put on a bunch of clothes. Don't do anything crazy. Don't touch anyone. So she was like, it's better than what I normally get, you know? So even though it was playing an Islamic role, they actually, everyone who was involved in it was like, this is great. This is 100% better than what we normally do.
Wow, that's interesting to know. And I guess the final thing that I was going to say, just initial thoughts wise, is it's good to see the topics that were in there, the themes that were covered, and I think it's very, very relevant. Like you said, you've kind of taken that classical tale and you've adapted it in the modern, you know, 2020, where we're living, and all of these issues are so relevant to the Muslim community. And like you said, some of it's uncomfortable, and I think I can already foresee that it's going to be difficult for certain people to digest. Oh my God, it's an Islamic movie, because the moment you hear the word movie, you think like something crazy, like from Hollywood, and it's like haram, and it's like, no, cover your eyes, you can't see it, right? But now it's like an Islamic movie. Is that even a thing? Like, isn't that an oxymoron? Like Islamic and movie, how do you put the two together? And that must have been quite challenging for you, right? Like, because I just want to know, like, when it came to the whole procedure, like scripting it, how long did this project take?
Oh my, okay.
Because I can just imagine, like.
Oh, so I shot it in 2017. So
what? 2017?
I shot it in 2017.
Seriously?
Yeah. So I'm releasing it now in 2020.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how long.
Okay, I think that tells us.
Yeah, it says a lot. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So it's just the process is extremely long and
so what have you been doing over the last few years? Has it just been like
editing
all of that?
Yeah.
It takes that long.
It takes a long time. Yeah. Especially when you're on a low budget. Like obviously you're independent. In all fairness, I did shoot 2 other films in the same time as well. So like, it wasn't like I was just doing nothing. I wasn't working on anything. Yeah, I shot another film the year before last, and I shot another film this last summer as well. So that also has been taking a bit of my time away. But like, I think it's so important to create stories that are captivating, that tell, you know, sometimes uncomfortable truths. Yeah, like you said, people might not necessarily. So those 2 words, Islamic films, people don't necessarily put those together because they don't know how those 2 things can work together. Yeah. And that's part of the vernacular that we have, and that's what we need to change. That yes, we can. The same way I used to struggle with Islamic poetry. People used to be like, how can you do Islamic poetry? Yeah. They used to tell me, and this is a very subtle, backhanded, racist comment. They used to say, oh, it sounds too much like rap. Right? And when someone says it sounds too much like rap, they mean it sounds too black. Yeah. Right? That's like the nice way of saying it's too black. So I think with this film, it's again trying to convince Muslims that no, it's a real thing. We can craft and shape our own stories based on our own principles, based on our own narratives. We don't have to compromise. We don't have to do things to appease other people. Yeah. I was talking to my friend earlier, and we were talking about the fact that one of the pet peeves I have is that when Muslims do try and enter the mainstream sphere, they do so in a way that is still appeasing to the quote-unquote masses, right? You can only have certain Muslim characters. You can have the goofy Muslim character. You can have like the bad boy Muslim character. But you can't have an actual practicing Muslim character. That is outside the lexicon of the Western world because that represents a threat. That's something we don't want to enjoy. We can't see religious people as people that are actually human. So for me to then flip it on its own head and say, actually, we are the mainstream. The people who are not Muslim watching this are actually on the outside. Yeah. I don't translate any words. If you notice in the film, I don't translate like, oh, assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you, brother. You know, like I don't do any of that kind of junk, right? Because I assume you're watching this coming from my world. Yeah. Which is an actual complete mentality shift. That's the thing that I think is more revolutionary than any, is that I am seeing us as the mainstream. I'm trying to value our perspectives. I'm not trying to minimize our moral values. A lot of times you'll find Muslim characters who are just, I'm a funny guy, or I'm an angry guy, or I'm this crazy guy and I happen to be Muslim. But for me, it's like, no, I'm Muslim first and foremost. And Islam is what shapes my worldview. So it goes without saying that I would be uncomfortable being alone with this woman. Right in the beginning of the film, there's a reason why we have this heightened sexual tension, because that's the culture that we come from, that a man and a woman alone, you know. So those things I don't explain. I remember my first film, Tug of War, I had a journalist who, I said that to her, I said, no, I make Islamic films, I make films for Muslims. And this journalist actually got offended by that.
Really?
She's this white lady, yeah, and she was like, oh, so what are you trying to say, that like, you know, white people or non-Muslims can't enjoy your films? I'm like, no, you can, but it's not for you. The same way Bollywood is not for everyone, right? Bollywood doesn't make films thinking about some guy in Ethiopia like enjoying their movie, and it's very clear Bollywood has it. And I think Western media does that so flawlessly and naturally that we don't even realize we're not the audience. Most of the TV shows we watch, they don't have any people of color, they don't represent our values, they don't represent our views, they don't care about what we think, but we're the idiots who just sit there and be like, oh, okay, this is funny, let me just watch it, right? So in order for us to actually empower ourselves to be like, no, you're the outsiders, dude. You are the ones who are outside of this world. This is the world that we live in. And if you don't necessarily agree with these values, that's fine. You don't have to watch it. But we're not going to change what we believe to appease you. Yeah. Right? That's the difference. That's what, to me, makes an Islamic film. And then, of course, there's the parameters by how you make the film, you know, using Islamic, using themes of that are relevant to Muslims. Then there's the Sharia stuff like music and, you know, women and hijab and those kind of stuff that, you know, there's more nitty-gritty stuff. But I think, for me, fundamentally, there is a mental shift in how we understand the audience we're watching. So when I did the first film, Tug of War, I remember some people would tell me, well, we get this film, but what if white people watch it? What are they going to say? They're going to get upset. I'm like, dude, I don't care what these people say. It's not for them. Like, why can't you accept that you are in charge? Like, I made this for you. It's the strangest thing, subhanAllah. It's like giving a present to someone and they're more worried about how everyone else is going to enjoy the present. I didn't do it for them. I did it for you. I think you're important enough that you should have a story that is based in your world. And so that, I think, to me, it's revolutionary, really, in the way we understand ourselves, in the way we understand the role that we play in the world, in the way we understand how our values are respected. You know, I'm not waiting for someone to tell me Islam is okay. I already believe in it. I'm good. You know?
It's so funny you mentioned all those points, and like the same amount of like energy and support that Muslims give to, like you said, mainstream or Hollywood. If we gave that same amount of it, like as an example, I'm not going to mention the TV show because I don't want to give it anything, but you'll know there was this recent show on Netflix that came out and everyone was going crazy about it because it's about Dajjal. You know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. And the energy that the Muslims gave to that, I genuinely feel like the producers of that show probably in their minds renewed it for season 2 because they knew the Muslims were going to watch it.
They knew.
And guess what? When it came out, it was the Muslims that were watching it. The same ones that were complaining, oh my God, how could they make us think about Dajjal? How are they flipping this and making it positive? They were, I'm telling you, every Instagram story I saw, I'm watching it right now. I'm watching the show right now. Like, come on, man. You don't give that same energy to like stuff that's out there in the Muslim scene. I genuinely feel like, inshallah, you know, like through works like, you know, Righteous Sinner, Tug of War, if Muslims just get behind and support it, because what do you think? Is it a challenge for you? Like, what's the biggest challenge or obstacles you faced creating this? Because like you said, 2017 you recorded it. It's coming out in 2020. And I respect that because you haven't rushed it and you haven't just tried to get something out. You've clearly, you know, worked on crafting and mastering this. What's one of the biggest challenges you faced?
Well, definitely resources are limited. You know, when you're dealing with a small budget. Like, so Righteous Sinner cost me to make, I would say like £30,000 less, probably less than £30,000.
Okay, that is a tight budget.
So that sounds like a lot to some people who don't know how film budgets work, right? Like a film budget, you don't even start until you got like 4 or 5 mil in the bank, right?
Wow.
So the fact that I made the entire thing for like £30,000 is like already, it tells you the amount of shoestrings that I'm sometimes I'm paying people with dua. I'm like, don't worry, inshallah. This dua you're gonna feel in the day of judgment, inshallah. Don't worry, you're not gonna get paid today, but I'll pay you that day, right? So it's to that extent that our resources are so limited. And again, me going around and trying to fundraise for the film, because alhamdulillah, I do have people that did support me. You know, jazakumullah khairan to all of them. And you have people who, again, cannot understand how that's even like I would go to a masjid. I did one fundraiser at a masjid. I raised a decent amount,
for the film, yeah?
For the film, yeah.
Wow, I can imagine.
No, for my first film, not for this film.
Okay,
for my first. But even then, it's a funny, like, imagine
yes.
after Jummah khutbah, oh, brother, we have some men in the hallway, they're raising money for a movie they're making, right?
Oh,
everybody's like, what? Like, what happened
imagine
to
that going down in East London,
right?
Like, it'll be crazy.
Ajib, right? People think you're crazy.
Yeah,
but, like, how do you think this gets made, right? Like, that's the only way.
Sure.
And so for some people, I think it's so strange how we think. Because you might think, okay, if I give you $1 or £1 to make this movie, is it the same as giving £1 for this orphan child? And I tell people, or they say, why would I give it to you when I can give it to that? And I think to myself, do you know who Allah is? This comes from a fundamental lack of understanding, actually, of who is Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah is Ar-Razaq. When you give for His sake, do you think that it disappears and that's it? It's an endless pond and your bank account is becoming nil? No, if you give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you believe, as Prophet ﷺ taught us, sadaqatul burhan, sadaqah is a burning proof of your iman. If you have that iman and you believe that, no, if I give for your sake, it's going to come back to me, then you can do two things at once. It's not me or this orphan child. It's not me or this. It's both. Give for this, give for that. Give for projects that are outside the norm, right? And that's how you build sustainability. That's how you build industries like what I'm trying to do. So I think that is a major shift that sometimes I have to convince Muslims of. It's getting over that psyche of, why should I invest in something like this? Why should I give my money to something like? And then when people see it, the people that have supported me, obviously they already know what's up. People that are, and I've had people, mashallah, tabarakallah, very generous. I had a brother actually recently gave me $10,000 US dollars for my upcoming film as a donation, just fi sabilillah, you know.
Brilliant, mashallah.
And he's a very smart person. I'll tell you why. Because he's investing in all the people that will watch this film, all the people that will benefit, all the people that will then be inspired and say, I want to make something in the future, all the khair that will come from it. It will live online, people will benefit, they will take those lessons and implement them into their lives. He is invested in sadaqah jariyah more than maybe perhaps I have, because my intentions could be skewed. I'm here and there, I'm focused on this, I'm focused on that, but his intentions, mashallah tabarakallah, was fi sabilillah, didn't want his name on it, didn't really care, it was just in the background. He saw, I like what you're doing, brother, you are the future of what we're doing, here's some money.
Brilliant.
Right?
Mashallah.
If I had 17 of these, if I had 17 of this brother, man, I'd be like Nollywood. I'd be making a movie every week. I'll be in and out, you know. But the reality is that I'm on a shoestring budget, right? I'm putting, first of all, most of the money is my own that I'm investing into my films. I'm taking whatever I have, and this you need a special level of yaqeen. Like, this is not, I'm not bragging about it. I think I'm more crazy than anything, right? It's to really believe in yourself and to believe that, you know what, if I do this for the sake of Allah, will Allah really let me down? Will Allah really tell me, you know what, I appreciate what you've done, your good deeds, but it's just not, it's not good enough. You know, how do you understand Allah? What do you think about Allah? You know, do you have husnul dhan of Allah Azza wa Jal? Do you think good of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And I think you can only be an entrepreneur, a creative entrepreneur, unless you have that husnul dhan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, unless you think good of Allah. Because I genuinely believe that if it wasn't for the fadl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it wasn't for the people that would come my way, like this brother who I don't even know. I don't know him at all. I never met him in my life.
Wow.
You know? And he legit just reached out to me and said, I want to give you money. Like that, if that's not an answer to a dua, I don't know what is, you know? So I'm working on a different playing field. I feel like everyone is worried about trying to appease these people, I'm worried about trying to appease Allah. And when Allah Azza wa Jalla is your producer, when He's the one who is behind the scenes making things work, alhamdulillah, you're always in good hands. Right? So I always see it in that sense, that that's the difficult part. It's sometimes it's a mental game with myself, like should I push myself, should I pull back, should I even do this film, is it going to be received well? The other aspect is sometimes the gatekeepers. I was mentioning this as well to my friend earlier, that there are a lot of gatekeepers in our community, people that they just assume something like this will not do well, or for whatever reason they don't want it to do well, or there's something in it which they don't like. So when I did my film about radicalization, there were some people who said, well, we're scared to talk about this first and foremost. Even though it might help people, we don't want the potential political backlash that can come from it. And especially at that time, 2015, you know, when ISIS was really big, and of course in the UK, everyone was crazy about it, right? So that was, I remember, just a fitna in and of itself, trying to convince people that, hey, look, I know this is an uncomfortable topic, but this is good for our community to have. We can benefit. We can grow from this. And from that one film, subhanAllah, I kid you not, I showed that film, Tug of War. It was about these two young people who were becoming radicalized. And it was obviously trying to convince young Muslims to not go down that road, right? I showed the film at one university, in a Canadian university. I won't say the name of it. And there was a young girl who came up to me afterwards. And the whole time she was watching the film, I could see her reaction because she would see things and she'd be like, "What?" She's like, "What? Are you kidding me?" She like didn't know if it was a comedy or if we were being real. Like her reactions were very skewed. It didn't match anyone else in the audience. And afterwards, she came up to me and she's like, "Look, brother, I really respect you." She knew me from poetry and stuff. And she's like, "But do you mean to tell me that ISIS is wrong? Like, what are you talking about?" And I was like, "Hold on, what are you talking about?"
Yeah.
And then there was a lineup of people asking questions. I'm like, everybody, just give us a few minutes. Let me just figure out what's going on here.
Yeah.
I come to find out that she has been secretly being brainwashed by these girls in her community, these young girls who actually tried to join ISIS and got rejected at the border, and now they had come back and they were basically giving her their own weird, skewed skins of dawah. Yeah, they were brainwashing her. And then when she heard and saw the other side of things, when she saw a Muslim speaking out against that type of phenomenon, she was like just confused because she was living in a bubble. She hadn't really spoken to anyone else. And so I told her, I said, "No, sister," I said, "those people are wrong. That's not Islam. Islam doesn't tell you to do that." She was like, "Oh." And afterwards I was like, subhanallah. I said, "Wallahi, akhi, if I saved this one sister from ruining her life, this whole thing was worth it."
Subhanallah.
If I saved one person from ruining her life, from harming other people, from throwing her entire life down the drain. She was only like 17, 18 years old.
Wow.
If I did that, this whole thing, sweat, blood, and tears, alhamdulillah, I can sleep at night knowing that I did the right thing, And I get emotional when I think about it because I think, how powerful storytelling can be. Exactly. Some people don't realize it. Our lives are shaped by the stories we see. Children grow up with low self-esteem because they never see themselves positively represented.
Yeah.
As a brown young man, as a brown young kid, when you watch TV and everyone you see that is good is white. Everyone that is positive, every superhero, Captain America, Hercules, all these people that are powerful and strong, they're not you. That plays a huge, immense burden on your head. Like that's how you end up seeing the world. That's why Black Panther was such a huge success and it's just a huge hit. Because people saw, wow, you can be different and still be empowered.
Yeah.
So I think if people really understood what the media does to us internally, subconsciously, without having to say, "Oh yeah, blatant racism," or some guy says something negative, that's subtle. That's blatant. That we can take apart later. But what it does to people, and young people in particular, just mentally, how we view ourselves. How do you see yourself on screen? Why are we never the good guys? Why are we never the ones who are... Our worlds are being valued because again, in my films, not every Muslim is a good character. Not to say they're all the best people in the world, but they're real and they are not outside of the normal scope. We are a part of this world, and sometimes our stories aren't great, but it's important that we value them.
I'm really, really excited for this film to come out now. So let's find out when we here in the UK, and to be honest, alhamdulillah, Ilm Feed, we have like an international audience. So when can we, inshallah, see this film on the big screen? So is that even possible? You're like, an Islamic film on the big screen, is that even possible?
Yeah. So we've taken, I've shown my film in theaters.
Yeah.
I've shown my films in masjid banquet halls. Well, I've showed my films in musallas as well.
Wow.
This is guerrilla filmmaking. Like, forget the way we made it. The way we're showing it is on a different level. Like, I don't care. One time I showed my film, I had a screening that got canceled in Malaysia, and one of the organizers was like, "You know what? We're just gonna show it at my house."
No.
So they went to their house and they set up TVs in every room. And they had a live feed going. So we had like 15 sisters in one room. We had these other guys, and we just showed the TV simultaneously.
That is so funny.
And I was like, that's what it is. I'm in the mud right now. I gotta get it where I get it. Like I don't care. That's fine. So, but alhamdulillah, we're showing this film for the first time in the UK on April 4th.
Okay.
In London, and April 5th in Manchester.
Nice.
This is just a test trial. Ramadan came at a kind of awkward time this year. People are still in school and stuff, so we wanted to just do a bit of a test run before Ramadan, and then after Ramadan we're going to do a kind of bigger launch and hopefully take it city to city. So if tickets are available now, you can go to likemedia.tv. You can get the tickets for those 2 dates, and if you stay in touch with me on social media, on my Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, you can see more of the screening dates coming up soon, inshallah.
Brilliant. And I think a lot of people will be asking who can't make it, that later on, is it going to be available online? Is there a way of watching
so
online?
Actually my other films, so Tug of War and Detainee X, which is the second film that I put out, they're both available for streaming right now. If you go to safinamedia.com, you can actually purchase the films and then make them available for streaming. So this is, again, it's a weird, because I'm like the first one doing this, or I'm part of a first wave of movements. It's not like there's any blueprint I can follow, right? I don't know what else to do. I mean, I can show it in theaters, and then afterwards I can make it available online. But it's not like I can just give it to Netflix or Amazon and all these places. Like it's not. There's no infrastructure set up currently. So this is what I'm working on as well. If there's some smart people out there that know how to do something better than me, Bismillah, maybe they can help me. But this is what I've been doing. I've been just literally taking the film city to city. I have to watch myself every single. You know how hard that is to do. Just keep watching myself over and over. I mean, I like it. Alhamdulillah, I did a good job, so it's not that bad. But that's part of the struggle. Is like, you know, I agree. Like someone misses the screening, and then what?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So we are working on that. That's unfortunately a reality of how it is now. But similarly, what happens in normal films? If you miss it in theaters, you wait till it comes out on. We're not doing DVDs anymore. That's long gone. But it is available for streaming at safinamedia.com. Yeah, alhamdulillah.
Brilliant, alhamdulillah. Yeah, like I said, I'm super excited, and you know, I think I've personally enjoyed it so far, and I definitely think that this is going to be, especially in particular this film, I think inshallah it's going to be a big hit. I can feel it coming, inshallah, and I'm really excited for you. And keep up the great work, inshallah. Continue paving and leading the way, and inshallah, those of you watching, keep an eye out for Righteous Sinner. It's going to be at a screening near you, or inshallah online very, very soon. May Allah bless you. Thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll have you back on very soon.
Inshallah. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. May Allah SWT bless you all. Thank you so much for watching and tuning into this podcast episode with our brother Boonaa Mohammed from Canada. Keep an eye out for Righteous Sinner, inshallah, and of course subscribe to our channel on YouTube, on iTunes, and all of the rest of the platforms, inshallah. From your host Shabir, I will catch you all next time, inshallah. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.